Does the Old Testament of the Holy Bible reveal the tomb of Alexander the Great, who was the king of Greece, as we know, about 330 BC? There were prophecies given by Archangel Gabriel to the prophet Daniel during the exile in Babylon concerning the king who would rule, who would be young, who would rule for 10 years only, who would take down the Persian Empire, and that his kingdom would not be inherited by his sons, but by divided into four by his generals. And that's exactly what happened. But what about the Old Testament? On the occasion of the recent archaeological discoveries in northern Greece, in Amphipolis, I made a video on that concerning a very huge pyramid, 3 times as big as the Giza pyramid, with the tumulus of Amphipolis being exactly the same distance as the Giza pyramid is from the Sphinx. That Amphipolis apex, which is the same exact pyramid distance from the apex of that pyramid in Amphipolis to the tumulus tomb, where the lion was on top as a Sphinx. So we have that connection between ancient Greece and ancient Egypt, the same exact dimensions. So on the occasion of the discovery of Amphipolis, a few people connected to the issue of the royal tombs there, with the place where the body of Alexander the Great is buried. Well, we don't know if he was buried there, but of course the research continues, and it would be superficial for someone to take such a hasty position on this issue, that if confirmed, it radically changes our representation of Greece and world history. Besides, in the case of Amphipolis, we made relevant publications in the past. Kindly support my Patreon account, since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. Now, in the midst of all this, on the internet, many remembered the prophecy of Daniel, the book of Daniel, from the book of the same name in the Old Hebrew Testament, the book of Daniel, which refers to the future king of Eurasia, the Macedonian omnipotent Alexander the Great. Indeed, in chapters 7, as well as the 8th and 9th, there is talk of the divinely inspired visions of the prophet, and the first and the second respectively. In the first vision, the prophet Daniel referred to the worldly kingdoms and the kingdom of God, while in the second vision he foretold the symbolic battle of the ram and the goat. Now, as we talked about the issue, and long before the issue of the tomb of Amphipolis came to the surface and publicity, but also all these online things about Daniel's visions of Alexander the Great, then with the front page news in the Greek newspapers under the title Prophet Daniel, Alexander the Great, and the revelation of John in the New Testament. Note, the whole text exists in Alexander the Great and the Greatest of the Greeks, published by Freedom Eleftheria, it's a new Greek newspaper, listing very important details. Quote, undoubtedly, one of the main historical sources that speak of Alexander the Great and can be used as an argument of the Greek side for the Greekness of Macedonia is the Jewish religious tradition. In the Hebrew Old Testament, this collection of the holy books of the Jewish people, accepted by both Christians and Muslims, makes a clear reference to Alexander the Great and his kingdom, which took the form of an empire and gave Hellenism its planetary dimension. And very rightly, the former minister wrote his classic and award-winning work on the Academy of Athens entitled The Falsification of the History of Macedonia, in which, through Jewish sources and testimonies about Macedonia, the Greek character and its region is proved. And it should be noted here that although the Greek state, but also Greek individuals, followed this tactic of march and did not exhaust their energy in silly conspiracies such as the Jews are to blame for everything and the like, no Scorpion or anyone else would even dare to raise the issue of Macedonian ethnicity separate from Greek. Now, because of the goal of every nation is not to invent enemies that do not exist, but to vigorously defend its own history and national territorial integrity. But so let's see what the Old Testament says, which also deifies Alexander the Great and proves his Greekness. So he writes in the book of Maccabees, okay, the book of Maccabees. The Maccabees lived about 150 BC, so they were about 150, 180 years after Alexander the Great. And the following, the rendering in modern Greek comes from Nicholas March. Okay. Alexander, the son of Philip the Macedonian, after his victory against the Persians, where he defeated Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, invaded the land of the Hittites and reigned instead in these countries, having previously become king of the whole of Greece, and all the then known world submitted to him, and the earth calmed down from the wars. He became the ruler of countries, nations, and kings, but after that he fell ill in bed and felt that he would die. He called near him his glorious companions. Let's remember, he grew up with them since nursery school. They were going, to the same teachers, and they were doing their same gymnastics and everything, and they were all with him during his campaigns. But he fell ill, and he called his glorious companions who had mingled with him since youth and shared his kingdom while he was still alive. Antiochus became king in the 137th year of reign of the Greek Seleucids. And also the archaeologist writes about above the Jewish Old Testament reported the following very important thing in his book. The promotion of the work of Alexander the Great at that time, that is about 150 years after his death, and especially in the book of Maccabees, is of great importance. The Maccabean brothers were heroes of the Jews. They came from Modin, just about 15 miles, very close to Jerusalem anyway, just sort of towards the Mediterranean, somehow, what should we say, north of Jerusalem, okay? So the Maccabean brothers were heroes of the Jews, and in their struggle against the successors of Alexander the Great, they opposed King Antiochus of the Great, who pressured the Jews to worship the gods of Greece. Antiochus had ordered that the statue of Zeus be placed opposite the temple of the Jews, and that sacrifices be made to Zeus. Equally impressive, with eschatological dimensions, is the reference to Alexander the Great and the Macedonians by the Jewish prophet Daniel, who had seen an impressive vision described in the book of the Old Testament of the same name, Daniel 8, verse 1 to 22. In the 3rd year of Belshazzar's reign, a vision was presented to me, Daniel. I was in Susa near the Yuval River. I looked up and saw a ram standing by the river Yuval with its horns high, one taller than the other. None of the beasts could stand before it. Here came a goat that was running at high speed and did not seem to touch the ground. The goat had a noticeable horn between its eyes, and he was running with great momentum. He reached and struck the ram and smashed its 2 horns, and there was no longer any strength in the ram to resist him. The goat became very big and glorious, but when it reached the great power, its big horn was crushed, and then 4 more horns sprouted in its place towards the 4 points of the horizon. Daniel, when I saw the vision, I was thinking and trying to understand its meaning. Behold, someone stood by me, and I heard a male voice coming from the river Yuval, and he said, Gabriel, explain the vision to him, and I will make known to you what will happen to you. The ram you saw is the king of the Medes and Persians. The goat is the king of the Greeks. The big horn that was between his eyes is the first king of the Greeks. The 4 other horns that sprouted instead indicate 4 kings who will emerge from this nation, but not for as long as he, the first king, is in power. The interpretation of the above verse of the Old Testament from the book of the prophet Daniel is more than clear to someone who has historical knowledge. In other words, it's very clear that the first and great king mentioned is none other than Alexander the Great himself, whose kingdom, the Great Horn, was broken and the four kingdoms known to us from history emerged, and therefore the beginning of the decline of Hellenism of planetary dimensions and the shrinking of the world domination of the Greeks through the imperial pan-Hellenism. Here it's worthy to note that the revelation of John in the New Testament is directly influenced and connected with the book of the prophet Daniel. The whole scene of the last book of the Bible walks entirely on the footprints of the model of Daniel, with the beasts, the horns, etc., elements that were used as symbols by St. John in order to describe the future historical events. Another striking connection between ancient Macedonia and the apocalyptic times is the reference to the apocalypse of St. John to Armageddon. Armageddon, Macedon, that is. Armacedon or Armageddon, analyzing according to interpretation as Armageddon, hence the land of Macedonia in Greek. Ar is the ancient Greek root for the word earth. Even in the Latin alphabet, the Greek letter G, the third ABC, that is replaced by C, and thus Macedonia appears. Amazing indeed, because it is really impressive that the last events are directly related to the Greek area, and in fact to Macedonia is eternal apple of dispute for many and various. So this is what we wrote February 2012, that is over 2,500 years ago. Fortunately, some online researchers have now discovered the association of Daniel's prophecy with Alexander the Great, even on the occasion of the archaeological finds discovered in the area of Amphipolis. It's never too late, however. When they copy us, they should also mention their sources, hence the text of the writer in the newspaper Eleftheriora, that means free hour, for ethical reasons. The research continues and will bring to light many shocking facts. Let everyone restrain this. After all, our time will be full of upheavals on many different levels. It seems that the great moment is approaching, and those who are ready are already listening to the unique emotion brought by the quote-unquote vibrations of the great change that's coming. This is from Volcano Times, and it's on a Greek article. Please leave your comments about this, and thank you for your support.